Hello, welcome to Chez Les Fleur podcast, where we talk to women in business that are making it happen. They're out there doing it. We talk about the ups and downs. We talk about the challenges and the fun. And we just love hearing what small business and women in small business and husbands and wives in small business are doing out there today. My really terrific guest today is Janine Smith, and she is an artist. And I know we are, all of us who appreciate art, don't always think about the business of art because it is a business, even though it is an art form. And, we think of art hanging on the wall or a beautiful sculpture in our parks downtown, but there is a business side of it. And Janine's going to be super informative with us today and tell us about that. Janine, thank you for being with us today. We are really looking forward to hearing about the business of art.
My pleasure. It's interesting that when you go to insure a piece of art, most of the time, all they'll give you is the cost of the materials. So artists generally have a problem pricing their work. It's there's a funny story about Picasso where a woman was sitting in a cafe and she looked over in Paris and she saw Picasso there. And she went over to him and said, "Oh, please, here's my napkin. Could you do something for me on the napkin?" So he took about 15 minutes and did something on the napkin and went to give it to her. And he said, "That'll be $50,000. And she said, "What? It took you 15 minutes." And he said, 15 minutes and 50 years. So, for artists, it's the cost of materials. When somebody is pricing something in merchandising, it's what was the labor cost, what's the transportation cost, what's the materials cost. But for an artist, it's also the inspiration and the learning of a skill that they have to constantly improve. So we're in a kind of interesting time because the avenues for expressing art are different than they were when I first started. When I first started, you made your work, you got a gallery, you showed your work, you sold your work, or you were in a group show, that kind of thing. Beginning artists could go into a library or a restaurant and place their work. But today with digital art, and the piece behind me is an example of digital art. This gentleman's work is wonderful. We had this whole thing with NFTs. I don't know if people know what those are. And, people were paying a fortune for silly NFTs that they couldn't put on their wall. They just owned it digitally. So, it's a challenge. I think each artist has to find their own way. There are things now where you can put your work up and people can order print on demand. People can sell their things on Etsy and other avenues. But to me, the real challenge is what is motivating you to keep going. And also, some of the other challenges that artists face are, how do I fit in? Like there's a fairly new trend, deconstructionism. I think that's the correct way to say it, where if you look at the work, it looks like it was done by a 5-year-old. But this is this kind of, I think it's glib. I'm very traditional because I think, having seen Michelangelo's David in Florence, when there was no power tools and no electricity, and this thing is 30 feet high,
It's magnificent.
It's magnificent. You can see the veins in the hands. So what moved that person, that soul, that individual to do that work? The blood, sweat, tears, Lord knows what the administration problems were, right? Getting the right help, all of those things. So to me, it's more what is motivating us, because I think this applies to any business. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to have the faith to keep going. We have to draw from something, some ability to keep going, something that moves us. And then that keeps us in, because for an artist, the work is wonderful. There's no shortage of inspiration to do the work, but then you've got to go out and market it. So I brought up deconstructionism because that's a trend. And are you going to try and fit with trends, or are you going to tap into what's your own unique mission, your own authentic thing that you're here to do? If we look at Van Gogh, I think Van Gogh made about $20 in his whole life. from his work, and his paintings now sell for millions of dollars, 60, 70, 80 million dollars a piece, maybe even more, right? So that's my area of encouragement, that we need to tap into what we have to give, why we're giving it, and then, that fuels us to do the mundane things, like do market research, find out where is the best place for our art, because not all art is for everybody.
Yes, true.
Some people do really well in graphic design, where they're using images and particular styles to promote other people's businesses. So, would be the first to admit that the life of an artist in any of the artistic fields is very challenging. Financially, it's challenging. I once read a statistic. I think dancers were the lowest paid. Actors usually have like 3 or 4 other jobs going on the side. And artists, there are granting bodies, and that's a whole skill you have to learn on the side too, to how to drop a proposal that's going to meet the criteria. And then you're competing with lots and lots of other people. I know businesses in general have to deal with competition. What's my competition doing? How are they pricing things? What market are they going after? So I really believe we have to have a strong foundation inside ourselves to pursue any business, and particularly as women, because we also face another challenge, which is, what is our identity? So much for women, identity has been imposed from outside. Are you a good wife? Are you a good mother? Are you a good this? Are you a good that? And we can get in the trap of looking for external approval. And this is again why I go back to having a strong inner purpose, an inner mission, a conviction that's going to take you there. And despite what the rest of the world says and does, because one of the problems for human beings is we have two different motivations that work at the same time. One is the desire to belong, and the other is the desire to be special. And those two things can counteract each other really
Yin and
easily.
yang.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's again, if we know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what's moving us. I actually have a quote, a Martha Graham quote. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here. This quote has got me through so many things in my life. I'm not sure where I put it. Let me see where it is. Bear with me a minute. Here it is. Now, Martha Graham was the founder of modern dance. And at that time, she was dealing with the institution of ballet. And as much as I love ballet and as beautiful it is, Swan Lake is Swan Lake. It just depends on how graceful your arm is or the length of your neck or whatever. But it's always the prima ballerina is doing pretty much the same thing, depending on where it's being played. But this is the quote from Martha Graham. There is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action, and there is only one of you in all time. This expression is unique, and if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it clearly and directly yours, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is ever pleased. There is no satisfaction whatever at any time. There is only a queer, divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others.
Wow.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. It's so true.
It's so true. Yeah. So that's, I think that can apply to any business. If you have a passion and you're moved to do it and you're keeping listening to what's moving you inside, what's turning you on, what's inspiring you. And then, all the nonsense stuff that goes on, you still keep your eye on that vision and keep going.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So what led you to the business of art? Or
I
did
was
art lead you?
I apparently from a very early age, I'm actually a multidisciplined artist. So I've trained in many disciplines. I was a professional actor. I'm a recording artist. I'm a
Wow.
writer. I've got a book up on Amazon right now that I've just put up,
And the
just
name of
published.
that book is?
What's the real deal with karma? Understanding the spiritual law of cause and effect.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
I got a dance scholarship very late in life. I got a scholarship at 19, which is quite old for a dancer to start training. And I was in a number of musicals in Toronto and film and television. That's a tough business. So really lots of stories about that business. Um, yeah, just was very creative from very early on. I started writing songs when I was 11 and performing. I used to lock myself in my bedroom and act out musicals, and so it was inbred. I was born with it.
That's fabulous. So it just keeps morphing and progressing and
Yeah, and I think creativity, it doesn't matter whether you're baking muffins or decorating a house or finding a new way to entertain children. Creativity is something we've all been gifted with. Everybody has their own way. It's just again that going authentic. A lot of people are stopped by others' opinions, what's acceptable. And, again, particularly for women, we don't realize how much we're being externally defined, our fashion, uh, what's attractive, what isn't attractive. And interestingly enough, because I am working on a show about women, women have been had this imposition on them in every culture. There are cultures where the women have to wear these bands around their necks that stretch their necks long. And there's another part of India where the heavier the woman is, the more people that have to carry her to a wedding, the better, more attractive she is. And yet we have other cultures where teeny tiny, tiny size zero is what's in. It's a bigger challenge, I think, for women to find that authenticity and to go inside and see what is motivating me. We're also really trained to please others and have to learn how to please ourselves, how to make our own priorities work with everybody else's priorities.
yeah, yeah, it's so true. And to have a creative outlet, and like you said, even if it's decorating a muffin or a cupcake or teaching a new game to entertain young people, it's all creative and it's all, part of art, the art of conversation, the art of game playing. It's everywhere with us. I'm just not
Yeah.
sure everybody's always in tune to it.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, interesting, the word art used to mean beingness. Thou art my son. Thou art the Lord of the realm. So it's really closely linked to who we are, and that biblical thing, God made man in his image. Our ability to imagine is a God-given gift. We all have that. So again, it's important for me. A spiritual practice is very, very important, a daily spiritual practice, because that keeps me connected to that inner drive, that inner motivation, and provides a lot of inspiration, a lot of problem solving, even practical things. So I encourage people to do some kind of spiritual practice every day.
Yeah, part of their morning ritual.
Well, whatever time works. My time is evening.
Yeah,
Because I'm not a morning person. Years of being in theater, I'm not a morning person. So, yeah,
yeah. You know, of course you're not. I mean, as soon as you said that, I thought, yeah, you would be working nights.
yeah. And you don't eat before you go on stage, right? Have to be at the theater. Like if the show's at 8, 6:30, make sure costume's good, get in makeup and all that. And then the show finishes 10:30. You're out of there 11, maybe later if the director has notes. Then you go get dinner because you're starving. You just did a show. Yeah. So
Oh, that's
3 o'clock in the
fascinating.
morning.
Um, what, tell us about your ideal customer. Who's attracted and who purchases your art?
That's an interesting question. You know, right now, because I'm working on a show, I'm actually more or less retired from the business world. Um, but I do part-time work. One of the jobs I have is I repair things. I was teaching at the Kawartha Potters Guild
Oh,
for a
yes.
few years, and then I stepped back from that because I wanted to work on my own show that I'm working on. But my business at this point is I do repairs for a moving company, and they bring me the oddest items to repair. One of the most recent ones I did was a 4.5 foot high plaster of Paris pelican that had been decapitated in the move.
Ooh.
And so, and the head must have weighed at least 40 pounds and was at a really odd cast back angle like that. And disproportionate. I went and looked online at images of pelicans, and this beak was way bigger than the proportion of an actual pelican, an artistic license, right? So that was a real challenge to get the head back on and plaster around it and then paint it. And then the challenge is to make it so it doesn't look like it was ever broken.
Yeah.
So I do quite a few things for them and a lot of unusual things that they bring me that have somehow had a mishap in the move. And they're such a good company that they repair it and give it back to the client. Hopefully almost as good as or better than new.
Well, I just watched an interesting article about the art restorers for the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Mhm.
And they talk, the team that restored the frescoes and the art and the frames and talked about the 100 years of grime and soot that's
Yeah.
on these pieces of art and how delicate and fragile and careful they had to be. And, their sort of closing comment was, if you've been here before, when you come back, you're going to notice that these paintings appear much brighter
Mhm.
because there's been 100 years of candle soot and grime and pollution on these paintings.
Yeah.
So I found that fascinating because of you're listening to it and you're thinking, of course it would be like that. You just don't
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. It's a whole, there's a whole art business in itself, restoration.
Yeah.
There's actually a company, these people are really masters. They will take very fine china and repair it. They have a whole process that does that.
Wow.
So again, artists can specialize in what moves them and what they're interested in
Yeah.
and
It's,
and develop that, right?
yeah, so many, pardon the pun, layers
Yes.
to the art
Yes.
world.
And then
Um,
there's always teaching, right? There's teaching of art and because I have taught art, I've also taught Tai Chi, which is probably considered more of a recreational activity than a business activity, something that people who are in business are doing to relieve the stress and have some enjoyment. Not everybody who takes a pottery class is going to be a professional potter, but they are going to get an experience of their own creativity and their own fun. And, this is one of the challenges about our digital age. I went to a seminar in the States and I was teaching a group of kids. I think I had the 8 to 11-year-olds. And I was going to teach them making balloon masks on with paper mache. So we got that far. Everybody did their balloons, and I had brought ribbons and sequins and beads and pearls and everything you could think of to decorate these masks, paint, um, anything you could think of. And the kids all just sat there and said, "What do we do now?" And there wasn't a sense of, "Oh, I wonder what would happen if I put this there. Oh, and now I want to try that." So this is something that being involved in the arts is a real gift to help other people. There's art therapy. There's so many things that you can do with the art, but for everybody, it's the beingness of having play and fun and enjoying something and getting over our perfectionism,
and creating something.
creating something. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, we could talk for hours. There is so many dimensions to this. And you know, I read years ago, I read the book, The War on Art. And I don't know whether you've read it or not,
No,
but
I haven't read
it
that one.
talks a lot about being still and letting the art land on you. I mean, that's a very simplistic Cole's notes. But you touched on it earlier in our talk today that, you know, it's all out there. And what this book basically says is you need to be still and let that land on you, because it's going to land somewhere. So
Yes.
if you're not
Yes.
receptive to it, it's going to go on to someone else. And if they're receptive to that idea or inspiration or vision landing on them, that's where it's going to land.
Yes. Well, that's what happened with the invention of the telephone. There were a number of people who invented it. Was the one who got to the patent office first that we remember, right?
Right.
And it's interesting you're saying about land on you, because I think the more we develop that inner relationship with that creative part of ourselves, I think it's actually a divine spark that's in everybody. I was commissioned to do a CD cover for an artist who has since passed away, a new age music artist. And they were calling the album The Journey. So I went all whole hog and I did this wonderful painting of a kind of a road leading up a mountain with, little sparks of light going up the mountain. Well, then the producer decided that they wanted to use another song as the title track. So I had kind of emptied my gas tank, so to speak, doing this one painting. And I went, oh, no, I don't know what to do now. And they changed the title to The Gathering. And I went into my contemplative state and I just said, okay, I don't know what to do. I'm out of juice. And I was shown the picture.
Wow.
Yeah, was shown it. So this is why I really encourage people to do some kind of spiritual practice. It's not always evident in the moment. Like maybe not everybody's going to have a big, huge psychedelic experience in a meditation or a contemplation, but it'll show up where you're saying, okay, I want to go and do this. And all of a sudden the inspiration will take another route. And you find out there was a big accident there.
Right. Yeah. And I
So
think
it's kind of a partnership with that creative force you were just talking about that's going to land it someplace.
yeah, and be open and receptive to that.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for being with us today. We could talk for hours. What I like to do is finish off with a few rapid fire questions just on things that maybe we didn't touch on. And if you're up for that,
Sure.
okay. Carr or Lewis?
Carr or Lewis?
Or Lewis?
Carr.
Film or digital?
Film.
Apple or orange?
Apple.
Pizza or burger?
Pizza.
V-neck or cardigan?
Probably cardigan.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you so much
I
for
guess that
being
lets
with us.
everybody know what to get me for Christmas, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for being with us today.
Pleasure.
We've got to have you back because I'm sure we can talk for ages and ages because like you say, the art world touches so much and so many nooks and crannies of our lives, whether it's a public installation or it's a little piece we have hanging in the hallway upstairs or a little line from a poem. It's everywhere. And I'm so thrilled that you're in the business of art and that you're enjoying it as much as you are and for your inspiration today and your quotes and just inspiration, I think is the word. So thank you for being with us.
You're most welcome. My pleasure.
If you are watching Chez Les Fleur podcast for the first time, we welcome you. If you are a returning guest, we are so glad that you've joined us to hear what's going on. We love hearing from women in business and the challenges, the excitement. And if you're if you're looking to watch us again, that would be awesome. And we're going to thank Janine Smith again for being with us and for all her wisdom, insight, and inspiration. Thank you, Janine.